Nothing glorifies God like sharing our story about how God has changed our life. This morning I'd like to ask Pastor Jim to come. And I got a few questions for Jim.
But you do.
And just as time, sometimes we do this in our service just to interview and so that you can hear people's stories. Usually we interview someone that attends Grace Church, but we thought that since we have Jim here, we'd be able to ask him a few questions. So my first, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your story, Jim? Not your Pastor Jim, about, your name, which I already said, your family, the job that you hold. Why don't you tell us a little bit in case people here that don't know?
Okay, sure. My name is Jim. Middle name is Christopher. James, actually. James Christopher Molloy.
Good.
Don't you want to know?
Well, I'm just
bugging you.
Okay.
So I work in our district office. So our district has 3 provinces: New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Nova Scotia. And our district office is in Truro, which is about 2 hours away from here. So I work there, working mostly in leadership development and next generation ministries, and things like missions and some other things, whatever the boss wants to give me, like what it was like when you worked with Silas or for Silas. Just anything he wanted to give you, just give you. So that's what my boss does to me. But most of the time, I do leadership development stuff, and that's why I get to hang out a lot with Pastor Mariah, which is always fun, and working in that area. And I have 1 wife and 3 kids. So my wife's name is Sandy, and I have 3 boys. No girls. I don't know what I would have done if I had to raise a girl. Like, that was a challenge.
Yeah. I hear you.
And so I have 3 boys. I have 1 boy who's 19. His name is Jake, and Jake has just purchased his 11th vehicle. So my drive constantly looks like a used car lot. It's parts of cars all the time. Our neighbors actually came to us last year and said, "Hey, do you mind if we build a fence?" And so they built a fence to hide all of the cars that are in my lot. So that's what my son does. He's into mechanics, and that's the way he lives life. And then there's an 8-year gap, and we have Ethan, who's now 11. And Ethan is my Alex. Lots of words. Many words.
Lots of words.
Not shy at all, outgoing, and a lot of fun. That's Ethan. And then 2 years younger than him is Brody. And Brody is just about to turn 9. If Brody had been the first child, Brody would have been the only child. Somebody said to me, you might as well, there's no difference in having 2 and 3. You might as well have, no, that's not true. Brody has had broken arms. He's had 11 black eyes. He's rough and tumble. He's just not aware of his body or his presence. He's banging into things. He's falling down. We don't even take him to the doctor anymore because we were scared what the doctor would think. But, well, Mr. Molloy, this is now his 12th black eye. We need to call the police. So we don't. But that's Brody. And so 3 boys, ages 19 to down to number 8, and that's it. No more. The end.
Good. Me and you have known each other for a long time.
Right.
Long time.
I don't remember where we met.
No?
Do you?
I'll do the interview, Jim. I'll do the interview. And, we know each other for a long time, but why don't you share just a brief about your salvation story and your call to ministry.
Okay. So you don't remember where we met?
The point is we met, Jim. Let's move on.
So I've known Pastor Troy probably for 25 years. More than that. How old are you?
42.
42?
41.
41.
41. Whoa.
You looked at your mom.
I heard her.
Well, she was there.
Yeah.
41. All right, I'm 44. Yeah, so we've known each other for a lot, probably from camp or somewhere. We became good friends. And let me pause to say that you do have a fantastic pastor in this church. Again, you don't know how good he got it. You don't know how good he got it. You're very, very blessed. I'm stuck in Truro with his sister. So Pastor Tasha's my pastor. She's a great leader as well. Somehow, I don't know how you did it, Jackie, but you pulled off 2 great kids.
All right, Jim, salvation story and calling. We don't need any family trouble. Move on.
Okay, so my background is my parents. My dad is Roman Catholic. My mother attended a Pentecostal church when she was a teenager, and then she just stopped going to church altogether. And my dad was a Roman Catholic, but never really went to church. And so they met, got married, were part of sort of a drinking and partying culture. Then I was born, and when I was 1 year old, in the town of Port Hawkesbury, a guy by the name of Gordon O'Coin, some of you may know him, he's a pastor in our district, he decided to plant a church in Port Hawkesbury. And he came along and knocking on doors and invited my mother to church. Now, he didn't know, but my mother had a church background, and she decided that she would go out and check out this new church that was starting in Port Hawkesbury. And when I was 2 years old, or a year and a half, my mother and me, she carried me to the front of the church where she gave her life to the Lord. Verna O'Coin, who is Gordon O'Coin's wife, she just passed away. She actually led my mother to the Lord on the front row of a new little church they were building in Port Hawkesbury, Nova Scotia. That's where my mother came back to Christ. My father, still not a churchgoer, and so me and my sister, we grew up in that little church. And then when I was about 17 years old, somewhere along that path, after being a part of some great youth ministries and things that happened along the way, gave my heart to Christ. And then when I was 17 years old, sitting in my father's 1990 Ford Grand Marquis, important detail, blue. It was a big boat of a thing. I was just sitting there, and all of a sudden, I just felt God say to me that He wanted me to go into the ministry. And I was like, this is bad. This is not a good idea, God, because I'm not cut out for that. Like, that doesn't fit me. I did assessments. I'll tell you what you should do. And I got things like crane operator, like put me 100 feet in the air in a little booth all by myself. The other one I got was fashion designer. Just saying. So I was either to be in a booth or designing dresses or something. I don't know what it was. So I was not, and they said that the assessments that they did on me told me that I should never, ever, ever be in a position or a career where I had to speak in front of people. That was the recommendation of my guidance counselor. So those of you who talk about, didn't want to be up front talking, it could be your life eventually. And so I thought I'd trick God and go to Bible school for a year, then He'd forget about me. And that didn't happen. I went back second year, and then God just kept calling me. And here's my life story in a nutshell. God, by His Holy Spirit, has continually made up the difference in my life. Like, because I don't have the abilities or the talents or the capacities or all those things to follow Him in this career, in this ministry. I don't have those skills. Like, all my tests prove, and everybody around me were saying, you can't do this because that's not how you're wired. God has somehow miraculously made up the difference. So whatever I didn't have, he made up the difference. So He took the little things I had, and then added all the things that are in Him, and He has been faithful to me for all those years.
Good. That's the hope for all of us. God will make up the difference.
Yes, that's true.
That's good. You wrote a book.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of a big deal.
Big deal.
What was your book about?
I wrote a book about 5 years ago on the topic of insecurity. Insecurity in leadership. And insecurity is just another way of saying fear, right? So it's just fear. And because, understand, that kind of get, if I give you my whole story, understand that I came from a person who was very afraid. And that's why I didn't want to be in front of people. That's why I didn't want to be in the ministry. That's why I wanted to be stuck in a crane somewhere, not having to deal with life. And so I was filled with fear. And I was noticing that all these insecurities in my life were affecting my leadership. And so because I'm an expert on insecurity, I wrote a book on how insecurity affects leaders. And every one of us in the room is insecure. We know that, right? Every one of us has insecurities. So that's not the point. The point is, how do we become less insecure, and how do we live with our insecurities and trust God in all of it? So I wrote that book for leaders, and I'm going to redo it again.
What's your greatest insecurity?
Again, insecurity is fear. So my greatest fear is failure. I don't do well. Anybody like that? You just don't like failing? No. Yeah, some people fail really, really well. They just go on with it. But when I fail, I go into the toilet. Like I just crash. And of course, the bigger the failure, the more I beat myself up. And so I'll leave an interview like this, and if it didn't go well, and right now I give it about a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
Not your fault.
No, I know.
You own 2 or 3. And I would drive away from here, and I would just feel, oh, why did I say that? Why did I? And that failure would just. So for me, it's failure. So and trying to shake off failure. Some people I really like people like you who fail often and yet still keep going. I'm like, that's great, but I don't. I just go to the toilet.
Okay.
We just dropped from a 6 down there.
Thank you for that. All right. 2 quick last questions.
Oh boy.
Why does the church exist?
Church exists to win lost people. Next question. No, it does, right? If the reason why this church is in this, I remember being here when this was just a building supplies place, and Silas came and said, "We're going to make this a church." I'm like, "Okay, pal, you try that." And here it is, it's church. And the reason why it's here is because there are lost people outside there. That's the only reason. I mean, it's great to have fellowship and teaching and good pastoral leadership and good stuff for young people. That's all good. But the reason why it's here is because there are lost people out there. And sometimes we forget that because we can enjoy great music and mediocre preaching and all kinds of stuff. We can enjoy that. So here's the thing. Let me think about this. If everybody on the planet was saved, this church would not need to be here. Right? So you wouldn't need to have church, right? Because you could have church at the hardware store or at McDonald's or whatever. So the only reason, that tells me that the only reason it's here is because there are lost people out there. Because if everybody out there was found, we wouldn't need to have this here. In fact, there's a day coming, the Bible says, when in the new heaven, new earth, when everybody is going to have a relationship with Jesus, and you're not going to have to get up at 9:30, 9:45 on a Sunday morning and rush to church for 10 o'clock. You don't have to do that. And that's why it's called heaven. You can sleep in on a Sunday.
All right, I'll give it a 4. That just went to a 4.
We'll get to the bottom.
Last question.
Okay.
Very serious question. What is the best church in all the Maritimes?
Careful.
I would narrow it down to 3.
Okay, let's hear it.
No,
what? Okay.
The best church in the Maritimes currently is the one that just brought some people to Jesus. So, this might be it.
Yeah.
This might be it.
Oh, totally.
If you brought some people to Jesus lately, because I don't know of many churches that really have this last week or 2. So you might be at number 1 right now. But you might slip to number 2 next week. Unless everyone here works together to win people for Jesus.
Beautiful. Thank you.
It's a pretty good church.
Thank you, Pastor Jim.
Guess I'm done.
If you're done. Just a couple of things.